After having heard so many great things about this film, I finally got the chance to sit down and watch it. I have to admit that when I first saw the poster for this movie, I was thinking to myself, now Hollywood is going to direct the Muppets. Do we really need another molestation of our childhoods? Well, despite my expectations, I recently sat down and watched the movie. I was amazed to see that the rating for this movie at RottenTomatoes.com was at nearly 100%. So I thought, okay, maybe this won't be as bad as the other atrocities that have played the silver screen over the past few years. Maybe this will actually be good. My God, was this a big disappointment. This was just as bad, if not worse, than the other films based on a popular franchise. Whether that franchise be Alvin and the Chipmunks, Scooby-Doo, Yogi Bear, The Smurf, or any other cartoon. Let me say that again to all the people who told me that this was a good movie. This was just as bad, if not worse, than the other films that have raped our childhoods. First of all is the plot. The plot centers around this couple going to Hollywood for their 10th year anniversary. In case you're wondering, that's how long they've been dating. I'm not kidding. You'd think that through the past decade they would have thought to get married. The secondary plot doesn't come until the couple goes to Hollywood, and they learn that the Muppet Theater is being shut down. The rest of the film is about the Muppets trying to save their theater. I'm pretty sure you can guess what's going to happen next. And while the acting is better than that of other acting performances I've seen in films like these, the acting is still very bland. Although I at least got the feeling that the actors were actually interacting with the characters, rather than looking like they were talking to themselves. Second of all is the songs. There are at least 8 different songs in this movie, if I'm counting correctly, with the repeat of one song at the end. These add nothing to the story or the movie as a whole. They're simply there for filler and nothing more. I could understand them including songs if this were a musical, but this movie is more or less a comedy, so including a series of songs in this film doesn't make sense. The songs as a whole are completely forgettable. Your time would be better suited going to the bathroom or fixing yourself something to eat during the musical numbers. The songs seem to come out of nowhere. For example, when the Muppets go to ask the villain if they can have their property back, instead of just outright saying no, the guy actually stands up and goes into a musical number before finally sitting down and simply saying no. Kermit responds with, "You could have just said that." This moment was so ridiculous, out of nowhere, I was laughing at how stupid it was. The jokes also were quite bad. Most of the jokes in this film are nothing but fourth wall jokes. For example, when the gang goes to get Gonzo, the building explodes just as they're leaving. One character remarks, "Wow, that was quite an expensive looking explosion." Another character responds, "Yeah, we must have had more money in the budget than I thought." Another fourth wall joke occurs when the antagonist and the elderly Muppets are talking, and one of them describes the basic plot of the film. To which the other responds, "Did you just set up a plot point?" This is followed by, "Yeah, so the audience will know what's going on." The only genuinely funny moment in the entire film where I actually chuckled was the point where the gang goes to get Annabelle from an anger management group. Other than that scene, I didn't laugh once throughout the entire film. Now let's move on to the characters. I don't know why this movie was called The Muppets. It has nothing to do with the Muppets. More or less, the plot centers on Jason Segel's character and his love interest, played by Amy Adams. This is very much the same thing that happened in Alvin and the Chipmunks The Squeakquel. The Squeakquel was more or less about the Chipettes than the Chipmunks. Granted, the Muppets are in this film, but they really don't do anything. If I might once again refer to the Squeakquel, the Muppets are simply there because the film needs them to be, just like Simon and Theodore were in the Squeakquel. The only reason the Muppets are even in this film to begin with is because of Walter, Gary's brother. If it weren't for Walter, there would be no reason to include the Muppets. And speaking of Walter, doesn't he look like Ernie from Sesame Street, only less fat and taller? I sure think he does. Seeing as how I'm comparing this film with the Squeakquel, I might as well discuss them. Like I said before, the Muppets was just as bad, if not worse, than the Squeakquel. What in all fucking hell makes this movie so goddamn special that it warrants a 96% rating on RottenTomatoes.com? But the Squeakquel only gets a mere 21%. The only thing I did like was the ending. In the end, the Muppets end up losing the theater. This leads to the stupidest ending ever. The movie ends with the Muppets going outside the theater to find themselves literally surrounded by their fans. And that's it. The movie just ends after that. We're not told what happens to any of the characters afterward. We're not told what happens to Walter afterwards. We don't even find out if Gary and Mary even tied the knot afterwards. Granted, I don't give a shit, but that still matters. You can't include these plot points and not give us the conclusions to them. Speaking of the plot, there are some big plot holes in this film. One example I can think of is when it was announced on the television that the Muppets telethon was set to air in a little while. The announcer stated that the host would be Jack Black. This doesn't make a bit of sense to me. For one thing, kidnapping Jack Black and forcing him to host their show was a last minute decision. Second of all, Jack Black was still in the trunk when they were heading to the studio. Another one is the audience with the show. Out of nowhere, hundreds of people start flooding the theater and sitting down to watch the show. The show itself is a big plot hole. You only see them rehearsing only once and that's it. No other time do we see them ever rehearsing, and yet despite that, they're able to pull off this grand show without having any need to rehearse. What the hell? To me, the show preys on sadistic people, since the only reason the people are even watching the show to begin with is to see the Muppets torture Jack Black. There's one point where there is a giant pin on Jack Black's head, and one of the characters is swinging a bowling ball around, apparently looking as if he's going to purposely throw the bowling ball at Jack Black's head, to knock the pin off his head. The only problem is that the character's fingers get stuck, which leads to the possibility that Jack Black can get seriously hurt if the character's fingers should slip out of the holes. But what's wrong with this? The audience is laughing at this. This isn't funny. This is just cruel and mean-spirited. For all of its problems, I have to admit that it was nice seeing the Muppets again. But it would have been better if they'd actually done something in the film instead of just standing in the background while we watch Jason Segel and Amy Adams try to convince us that they're a legitimate couple. Fans of the Muppets from the 1970s and little kids might like it, but as for me, I'm so fucking fed up with all these goddamn films being made that do nothing but butt-fuck our childhoods, as well as the loyal fans of said franchises. Don't bring back a franchise for a quick buck. Or if you do decide to resurrect a dead franchise, make sure it's in the hands of the fans, the people who know these characters, and know how to write them. Putting a dead franchise in the hands of Hollywood isn't going to do the franchise any good. All it's going to do is butcher the fuck out of the franchise. And I'm not looking forward to the new Hong Kong Phooey movie. I haven't seen the trailers for this film, but if it's anything like the Muppets or any other shitty film based on the cartoon, it's a pretty safe bet that it's going to be a piece of shit.